That's okay. It's getting started. Perfect. So our title today is Inspiring Leadership in a COVID World. And I chose three of our CEO members for specific reasons, because they're in different industries, they've got different perceptions, but they've also mastered certain parts of this whole journey. And I think we can learn from them, and we learn from each other. So thank you to the three of them. And thank you to all of you who have showed up. I mean, what's a session without people who are going to learn there and ask questions? So our three panelists are Scott Brown from Fifth Avenue Real Estate Marketing, Simon Dannatt from the Sound HQ, and Tony Scott from Platinum Proclaim. And what I've asked them to do is to prepare something for us 5 to 7 minutes. And I've given them suggestions of why I've chosen them. So hopefully they'll listen to some of that. But it's really for them to tell us how they're coping and how they're leading their teams through this period, this challenge that's COVID, but this challenge that's also got opportunities, and what are the new skills they've mastered and how they take that forward. So I'm going to have them present in alphabetical order, just to be fair, according to their last name. So Scott will go first, then Simon, then Tony. And I've asked them to give us just one little tidbit. You've all seen their LinkedIn profiles, so I'm not going to go through all their credentials, but just one little tidbit of what might be something interesting about them that no one knew about before. And so Scott, and I'll read this. He says, when he was 24 and starting his career in organizational development consulting to improve my critical thinking and public speaking, I completed a level 1 stand-up comedy course at Vancouver Community College in partnerships with Yuck Yuck and Theatre Sports. The hidden benefit, I gained plenty of experience handling rejection. So without further ado, let's give him a virtual hand. And over to you, Scott, for your 5 to 7 minutes. Thank you.
Okay. So good morning, everybody. I run a business that's about 40 people or so, about 14 tightly at home office in Surrey here. The business has been around for 40 years. I've been CEO for 7. Interestingly enough, I've been with McKay for a few years. And the funny thing is, and this is why I should probably be kicked off the call, it never really connected with me what McKay's purpose was. The whole inspiring leaders and virtual leaders. So I was like, oh, until he asked me to be on this call, I was like, oh, duh, that kind of hit me in the face. So, because I think I get lots of value out of McKay. I just never thought about the idea of helping me become an inspiring leader. It does, but I never made that connection. And so preparing for this made me go back, and I was also a little bit hesitant when he asked me, because I said, I don't consider myself to be an inspiring leader, but that doesn't mean that I consider myself not to be a decent leader. But then I really thought about it, and I thought, well, okay, let's go back and look at some things that I believe, that I've learned from mentors, and that things that I don't get to decide, in my opinion, whether I'm inspiring or not. The people that work with me, they get to decide. So it's going to make an interesting question for Friday at our normal Zoom staff meeting, is that without asking them to give me feedback and then they all feel like they have to say something nice, I'm trying to find out what inspires them to see if I'm actually lining up with it. I think it is, but my answers today are gauged very much by how I've watched them respond to things that we've been doing in the last month. One of my fundamental beliefs is you can't be what you aren't. A mentor used to tell me people are far more inclined towards those who are interested more than interesting, who are inspired more than inspiring. So I looked back at, and I asked myself the question getting ready for today, what inspires me? And I do think I'm an inspired person. And what inspires me is acts of self-sacrifice, acts of love, passionate people. I don't care whether they're a doorman, a waiter, a president of a CEO. I am inspired by people who are passionate about what they do. I also am inspired by people who try to help other people get better. So I definitely feel that I'm inspired through this by watching other leaders everywhere, including some of the municipal leaders, step up in ways I didn't expect, and that inspires me. So I think a lot of it for me is, really trying to make sure that I'm inspired first, because I don't believe you can give something. You can't love if you don't have love. I don't think you can be inspiring if you're not inspired. So how do we make sure we're continually stoking our own fire, so to speak? It's funny though, because I've been a guy that I'm not into Tony Robbins or anything like that, and I don't discount that. That's just not me. But I know there's a better market for inspirational posters too than there is for demotivations. This sucks, with a nice little cloud on it or a guy falling off a tree. But I look at our staff now and I'm thinking, okay, inspiring and engaging to me go in hand in hand. I've been working more on trying to make sure that they feel super engaged and I guess therefore inspired. They're very closely related. So what have I been trying to do that? And then I look back at sort of this Tony Robbins thing and I said, well, I've always had since I was 18 or 20, a mission statement, a set of personal values, a set of personal tactics, and I revisit it frequently. I revisited it this year and I shaped it a bit. But about since when I was 18, for whatever reason, I don't even know why, probably some trying to resolve some childhood issue and I got over it, but I still kept the mission. My personal mission in life, and my staff knows this, is to have a positive, genuine, lasting, and meaningful effect on other people. That gets me out of bed. So even in COVID, I got to show up and try to be positive, genuine, authentic. I added in there as well, because I don't want to be a phony, shiny, happy person, right? There is pain in the world and suffering and challenges with this. But I link this back. So part of maybe for me being inspired is having clear direction for yourself and keeping yourself accountable to that and in check with that. And so even when I fire staff, I'm trying to do that in a way that we fired someone or laid them off about just before COVID, and timing was interesting. And we had a chat on Sunday where even though they sued us and we settled, and they didn't sue us for anything wrong, they just wanted more settlement, we're both okay. And she said to me, you know what? You were right. I didn't realize I was unhappy, and I'm actually happier now. And so we have a relationship, even though we went through that. So to sort of finish, what I've said is I've been thinking a lot about what's inspiring and what our staff is responding to. Our staff is responding to me to a few things. I think inspired leadership is about clarifying. There's no certainty, but I'm always trying to make sure we're as clear as we can about what's happening, how they're feeling, what our options are, and what we're going to do together. So I find communicating and clarifying both current reality and future vision and different options of it is really important. Being energized myself is important. Collaborating, I treat everybody who works with us, I never say they work for me. We're like partners, we just have different responsibilities. And they seem to respond to my expectation of be a partner, don't just have a job. And the other one is I'm really learning how to balance this whole idea of my weakness as a leader. In the past have been highly supportive. So that strength taken to an extreme is a weakness and probably not as strong. And I've learned it a bit through talking to other leaders through McKay. But of lately in this whole crisis, I've learned that when I am stronger as well on holding people accountable and expecting more in balance with support, people are more inspired than when I'm just really the nice supportive coach guy. So to wrap it up, I guess there's a few things that I've been working on with the team to summarize those four things, but in a couple of things. One is I'm trying to be radically transparent and very vulnerable with our staff. Not insecure, but vulnerable. How do I feel, right? Where am I making mistakes? What am I learning, right? And demonstrating the safety that they can be vulnerable with each other and with me, but that we can find our strength in being real and honest with each other. I'm definitely working a lot with our leaders to promote, as much as that this is an intense situation, a real sense of being calm and helping people stay in that mind that can strategize as opposed to getting in that shutdown mode of not being calm. We are spending a lot of practical time practicing our culture. All of the work we've done in the last year and a half to clarify and create very culture-specific language around our values, our compass, our practices, our home office code of conduct. All that work is paying off because it's surfaced up, and we've said we are going to use this to navigate our way through this, and people are seeing it, and now the conversations about our values are exponentially increasing rather than just me as a leader espousing them. And that's really exciting, is to come back to that foundational direction of values. And then lastly, I'm just trying to come up with clarity for them and me of what are my desired outcomes coming out of COVID? Or desired outcomes out of my interactions with our team coming out of this. I want to make sure that our teams value clarity in action and thought over certainty, because certainty is a myth. I want our staff to come out of this more courageous. And so by vulnerability, I talk about scenarios where one thing could happen is, and how would we manage laying off significant amounts of staff? I give my staff credit that they can handle contemplating that without falling apart, as long as we don't spend too much time on it. I want to enhance our workplace through this and after this to be a better place to work. And I think there's some certain things. The last question I'll end with is that our team's asking ourselves, when this is over, we've had to make a number of rapid changes. We're making sure we're saying, what are the things when this is over or we're on to the next thing? What are the things we've learned from this that we don't want to undo and go back to?
Thanks very much, Scott. Let's give him a virtual round of applause. There'll be time afterwards for some questions. But Scott, really what struck me was the part where you spoke about where you have your personal purpose and you're living that personal purpose, bringing it across. And you're also not afraid, what I picked up, to say the word love. I love you. This is Spark. We're on this journey together. Let's support each other in that way. So thank you for that. And thank you for the 4 learning points. Let's turn our attention now to Simon. Simon says he's an Englishman by birth, but no one is perfect. He's now proudly Canadian. And don't talk to him about Brexit. Please don't. Okay. He's currently social distancing at home with a grumpy 17-year-old with mono or strep. We don't know which yet. So they're deciding. And I used to blame traveling all the time for not getting enough exercise. Turn out that's not the reason. Without further ado, over to Simon. Give him a hand.
Thanks, Nico. All right, so I'm going to talk about 3 things. One, all in the context of what am I doing with the team. And the 3 things are contact management, and I hesitate to call it meeting management because I'm not sure meetings is quite what they are anymore. The second one is the concept of holding rather than in terms of leadership and holding the team. And the third one, I'll explain what I mean by that in a second. And the last one is outcomes, which is the way we manage our business. A little bit of background on the company. So I'm the CEO of The Sound, which is a consumer market research, brand strategy, and product innovation company. So our clients are large-scale consumer-facing product and service companies around the world. And the team is distributed. So I have people in Toronto and Chicago and New York, in the UK and in India. So I guess in some respects, I've been lucky that the team is very used to working online. They travel all the time as well. So it's rare that any of them are actually in their home base. And our clients are all over the world. So we're often with them in places in the world. So some parts of this we're totally used to and other parts totally not, just like everybody else. So contact, not really meetings anymore. We have an ethos for the company, which is we're smart as fuck and never boring. That's our internal mantra. It does show to the outside world sometimes. So the team is youngish, late 20s, early 30s, pretty maverick, pretty in your face, and actually using swear words as part of our culture, so I apologize in advance. We're actually probably too late already. So meetings and meeting management is critical. We have a lot of communication going on. And it is actually possible to have too many, we've discovered. So that's one thing, but it's easy to fix. It's quite hard to get there, but it's easy to fix once you realize that there's been too many meetings. So the top tips from us have been, have short meetings. Don't plan long meetings. Don't have hour meetings. Make your meetings as short as you possibly can and manage them to that, and make sure there are breaks between them. We spend a lot of time on video calls, and now we're down to, most of our meetings are down to 40 minutes or less. So we actually plan 40-minute meetings or 20-minute meetings. Another top tip is chat. If you're not already using that, apart from email and videos, is really key. It's a tool for reaching out to people and just checking in they're okay without having a long conversation. It just says as a leader that I'm paying attention to you and I'm reaching out. And make sure when you reach out to people outside of meetings that you actually put time in for them, actually have a meeting about them rather than, or a call about them, or a chat about them rather than business. In this world, they really appreciate that. I mean, they do normally, but right now that's pretty critical. And make your virtual cocktail parties and lunch meetings optional. We had some real issues where people decided they did not want to be at another fucking cocktail party without cocktails or other people. So that's point one. The second one is a sort of philosophical one, which is about holding people. So we're in a time of fear and uncertainty and huge change, and people are not good at change. Even normal structured change is a challenge for most of the team members, and I have some pretty smart people in the team. So the concept we've adopted as a leadership team is this idea of holding the team. So making things clear about what we see and where it's going, not a long-term vision, because no one's buying long-term visions anymore. It's all about what we think is going to happen in the short term. Yes, obviously we don't necessarily know what that is, but what we think is going to happen and what we're going to do about it. So there's a sort of concrete fence around the day-to-day that people can latch on and do things with. So our job as leadership is about containing that and interpreting what's going on and presenting that, not with certainty, not saying we know what the answer is, but just saying, this is what we think it is, this is what we're going to do about it, this is what we need you to do. And then the last thing I mentioned is outcomes. So everything we do from a business perspective now is about outcomes. We don't manage tasks, we don't manage workload. We explain to people, this is what we need to achieve, this is what we need you to achieve, and when, and that's the outcome. And then obviously why. And what we found with that is, A, that means you need to break things down more tightly than you might have done in the past. So it's smaller chunks so people can wrap their heads around that. And the other part of that is it spreads load. So it's easier to take those pieces and put them onto different people if certain people are getting overloaded or overwhelmed. And then the last thing that's been a huge benefit is when we've explained to people why we want them to do a certain thing, they've often come back, and it's been great to say, well, if that's what you're trying to do, if that's why you're trying to get this thing done or why you've asked me to do that, wouldn't it be better to do this? And that's been amazing because we've changed a whole bunch of our systems and processes because we've said to people, this is the outcome we want. Now let's talk about how we do it and get it done, rather than managing the amount of time they put into it or the hours they do or when they do it. It's just, these are the things we need to be done. This is when we need it done by. And the team has responded hugely to that, and it's been massively successful for us. There you go. 5 minutes, 3
Thanks
bullets.
very much. Let's give him a hand. Thanks, Simon. To me, that's something that's really important, is this part of holding space for people. I've seen it in this period especially. Some people can just check in for 5 seconds on a text or something. And as long as you can check in 5 seconds and you know they're okay and they don't need you right now, you're just holding that space. And others may need an hour-long coaching session, and we've done it. So to me, that holding the space thing is incredibly important this time. So thank you for all your insights. Okay, and last but not least, is Tony. Tony, his fun fact is he started his first real business growing into 2 employees when he was 9 years old. And he's got a second one. I was once rescued by helicopter after spending 2 nights in the wilderness in February in minus 25 degrees temperature without a tent. That's the second thing. And I've got a third thing to add, because I learned from Tony in the Harrison Hot Springs hot tub that you can have your toenails painted if you want to. So, and we've done it since then, and it's a lot of fun. So over to you, Tony.
Thanks, Nico. The idea was it was going to be, you could choose which one.
I chose all 3.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. Yeah. I wasn't going to talk about the toenails, but we're trendsetters. Yeah, I think the thing is, I'm really shocked at how similar everybody is to these 3 people. I think Nico has chosen people with very similar ideas and outlooks, even though our businesses are quite different. Everybody kind of talks to us about culture, and we get asked all the time, how do you get such a great culture? And it's a very hard question to answer because there's no formula for culture. But what I just heard from you guys is the same with us. We just really care about our people. It's and how we implement that and what we look to do with our people and the choices we make every day is our culture. It's who we are. It's what we believe in. And how we reinforce that is the other part of it. We really reinforce it by constantly doing the right things and taking care of them and making those decisions. I always think of that as it goes back to a value. And for us, the culture thing started with a really basic value that we always want to do what's right for the employee. And while that sounds pretty airy-fairy, it really is similar to what you guys were saying. It means having that hard conversation sometimes. It means telling somebody that maybe they're in the wrong business. It means telling somebody that what they're doing is hurting themselves in what they want to achieve in their life. Those can only come into context once they know that you actually care about them. You can't do that if you don't care about them. The benefit of that is, and I heard this I have hardly ever heard anybody say, "Hey, we let them go, but we're still good. We're still friends." And that's like the check, I think, for whether you're doing it right. If you really care when you're letting somebody go, and you're doing it for the right reasons because you really care about their future and what they're doing, then why wouldn't you be friends? And you don't have to steel yourself for that moment where you're letting them go and prepare yourself for an argument. You can just be absolutely honest. And for us, that's where we really started with that idea of what was guiding us. And from there, we take those values and we make almost every decision we make, we take it back to the values. Especially in a time like this or in any difficult time, you always have to have that group of values that you can go back to help make a decision. With HR, it was always what's best for the employee. And we'd say, well, is that what's best for the employee? If you get a really tough situation, somebody's not fitting in, somebody's showing up late, you think, well, what's best for that employee? And that can really inform anything that you could think of in HR if you really take that to heart. So we added values to that as time went by. And we talked about who we are as people. Well, we care about our planet. So we implemented, environmental things, and they really came up from the ground up. And so we take care of those things. We care about our other people. If we care about our own staff, we need to care about our clients in the same way. So is that what's best for the client? It came out of that. So the reason I mention these things is really gets to the part, you guys have really covered this kind of stuff really well already. But what I wanted to get to was more, where does that take us now? And one of the things that we've experienced in our industry, I've been doing this for just about 30 years now, and we're in insurance restoration. So we repair buildings after fires and floods, and we have a large staff in 5 different cities, just I think over 300 people. But one thing about our industry, it just constantly changes. Every month, insurance companies come out, or certainly every year, they have a new idea of how we should do things, and they change their own protocols. And in the last 30 years, we've gone from a total cowboy business to extremely controlled business by insurance companies as they get into their supply chain management. Those things change us all the time. So the one thing that we've learned is if something new comes along, quickly learn about it, embrace it, and try to be the best at it. And I don't think this COVID epidemic is any different. We need to learn what it is. How will it really affect us? Best guess a lot of times, but there's a lot of good research out there. And then what are we going to do to be the best post-COVID company in our industry? So that'll mean something different for everybody. But I think that premise that you stop and already are looking at it, we've already started implementing a 3-month plan to get us where we think we need to be post-COVID. We did that by looking at where our number of projections were, what things were going on. And we used the 3 months really because that's when the wage subsidy is going to run out. So anyway, we're going to, people call it pivoting, and sometimes I hate key words that everybody talks about and focuses on. Transforming is another way to put it. But for us, we looked at this one thing. We looked at what's the world going to look like. Well, people are not going to go out for dinner as much as they used to. People aren't going to be going out different places and congregating at football games. And those things, they seem small in our business. It means people are home all the time. And that means they're having less insurance claims. They have less pots left on the stove that burns the house down. If something's leaking or something goes wrong with their plumbing, they're there. They turn the water off. And so we've seen a great decrease in that end of things. We've made up for it by cleaning buildings that are contaminated with COVID-19, but in this world, that won't be there after this. So what we looked at is we need to completely change our model. Right now, we have very large businesses in one city. And so in Vancouver, we decided that really you need to be much more community oriented. If we get more close as a community, we need to really connect with our local community through the city, through Chamber of Commerce, any kind of thing that will connect us to a group of people in the city. So that's sort of looking at what is coming in the world. So to do that, we figured to open 3 or 4 offices in the Lower Mainland as opposed to having one giant company. everybody's going to have something different to apply to that because we're all different companies. But I think anybody who thinks it's going to look this way or go back to normal in the next year or two, I think is absolutely incorrect. This will be a long, slow process. And so we need to prepare for that. Business for us, we decided, is not going back to 100%. We're counting on 70%. If we get 70% back in 6 months, we'd be happy. And we need to make sure our business is ready to survive for that. So therefore, this goes back to our values. We change fast. We're always transforming ourselves into whatever it is it requires to be great. Partly for us too, the last part of this is giving to the community is such an important part of any business, and engaging the community. It is for us our lifeblood. And so with that in mind, we've been working with each city, holding drives for PPE, working with Conquer COVID-19. I think you can never miss the opportunity to be who you are to the community. And for us, we're giving, we care about people, and all those are great opportunities to really show everybody this is who we are. We're going to show it by giving back and caring in the way that fits with us. And so that's been a great experience for us. Out of all this, we end up getting exposure across Canada. And one of our goals was, I remember in the CEO thing, we talked about what our 5-year goals were, the first CEO retreat I went to. And the last one on the list that we haven't achieved is that our name would be known across Canada. And I just crossed that one off. We were on the national broadcast of the news. And so that was, what, a year and a half ago. So we've knocked it off our 5-year goals. So it's been pretty good. And I just want to say to everybody, I really appreciate what you guys have said. I got a whole page of notes. But I never expected to hear from such a diverse group, so many things that resonated with me and my company. So I thank you for that. And that's it for me.
Thanks, Tony. Let's give him a hand. Thank you so much, Tony. I think especially this, I don't know, it's kind of like you puzzled this out before the time, because you were adapting to these insurance companies changing tech every time. And your attitude is, let's learn it, let's figure it out, and let's become the best at it. I mean, it's kind of what COVID is asking from us as well. So that's incredible. So thank you, Tony. It's open for questions now for the 3 panelists. If you have any questions, just raise your hand and I'll go to unmute. Mike, it looks like you want to go first.
Sure, and thank you, gentlemen. I think I found that quite insightful, and I have both, I guess, a comment and a question. The comment I'll just throw out there first, and there's lots of talk about how we get back to normal, but I think part of our responsibility as leaders is to acknowledge that going back to where we came from isn't necessarily the best place to go, and that there's opportunities to build on some of the positives we see during this time. Like, the simplest example I guess I have is the number of people who stop and talk as they walk by the house, because so many more people are out walking now. And that's something that didn't occur in the past. And boy, wouldn't that be nice if we could remember that community interaction, knowing your neighbors, is a very positive thing to come out of this. And getting back to normal, where you don't know your neighbors and you don't take the time to stop and get to know the people around you, is not something that we would necessarily want to go back to. And so my question is, and Tony, you touched on it, and so I thank you for that, because we focus a lot on internal leadership, how we show up with our staff, but just as important is how we show up externally to clients and communities. And so just to, and again, Tony, I think you spoke quite well to this, but the other two, how do you think about your role as a leader outside of your staff group and outside of the walls of your company, and what kind of responsibility do you think you have in that area?
So your question is more directed to Scott or Simon, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah, I guess so, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I can jump in quickly. I think, first of all, I want to be a whole person in terms of how I lead our company, but how I work with our clients. One of our values is mutually beneficial collaborative relationships, and I really want to collaborate with our clients through this. I care deeply about our clients' businesses. I don't care just about making money off our clients. I want our clients to thrive through this. I want to help them, and I do want to partner with them to give stuff away. We have our mission for our business is called Bringing People Home. It fits real estate, new home marketing and sales, but I want to do more things coming out of this where we co-fund. things with our partners. We say, look, we'll put up this much of our fee if you'll match or do something too. Let's do some things together around it. So we've done some initiatives in the past around homelessness and these kinds of things, because I think if we're trying to help people find their new home and that dream, and I learned this in the luxury business because it bothered me, where I'm helping millionaires buy their 7th and 8th home, then I wanted to also help someone who is just striving to find basic shelter to do it as well. So we're tightening our focus on that. We can do better in this area, but I think it's being there for our clients as much as our staff. And even if they want to talk about how they're building their business, I'd love to partner with them, sharing ideas back and forth.
Sounds good.
So I said our internal thing, which is smart as fuck and never boring, but the external one, which we talk to clients about, is what the sound is actually all about, is engaging brands with people. So our, if you like, that's our mission or purpose. We believe lots of big CPG companies and service companies have lost sight of the fact that they actually need to see their users or their purchasers or their end users as real human beings. So we already do a lot of work bringing to life what it's like to be one of those people in a way that's sort of impactful and inspiring and insightful for clients. So we use a lot of video for that. We also have initiatives across the whole company where people spend time out and about with real people across the spectrum of what those people are. So we already have a bunch of that, and we've been doing that, but we will be doing more of that as part of our business. Is, you know, if you want to advise a CMO on what to do with their next packaged breakfast cereal, you actually do really need to understand the people at the end of that and what they're doing and how they're buying and what life is like for them. And I think what life is like will become really critical in the world. Well, it already is really critical, but now it's really even more critical. So we'll be doing a lot more work on that and bringing that to life for people who aren't exposed to it on a daily basis. So, for example, last year we took some fairly senior people from Unilever, where we videoed and went and talked to people who were in the poverty classification in the US, so household poverty, and showed them what it was like and whether they actually buy Unilever branded products like Dove and similar products, because the assumption by those people was that they don't sell to those guys. And the reality is they do. Those people buy them. They just buy small packs and not very often. So bringing that to life and then what they could actually do for them in a real meaningful way was part of the process we went through last year. So we'll be doing a lot more of that going forward.
Thanks, guys. Next question. Kevin?
Yeah, mine is specifically for Simon. I was very interested in your comment on trying to give people outcomes rather than giving them targets to help them focus on what needed to be achieved and by when. But it was interesting in the conversation talked about, rather than telling them how long something would take, we gave them a target saying we wanted this accomplished by this time. So can you maybe elaborate on how you differentiate between you need to be done by Thursday as an outcome versus a target?
So the key difference in the way we talk about outcomes versus targets is the why. If I'll take it to a high level and then take it back down to a low level just to explain. Often a client will come to us to say, we need to sell more, or either we need to sell more of this product or this service. So it could be, I don't know, it's a pen, or it's not selling. What do we need? So their outcome is more sales. It's pretty simple. But so the work we do is about understanding why people are buying it or not buying it, what they think of the brand, why they don't align with the brand, why they prefer something else, that sort of thing. And people get lost in the work they're doing in terms of, my job is to understand this, rather than my job is to answer that question. So the outcome is, what is this going to deliver next, and why are we doing it, rather than, I need you to do 10 of these things, which is a task. So we spend a lot of time getting people to think about what is either the next stage in the process that needs to happen, why you need to do it this way. So those are the outcomes. What is it you're achieving by doing this, rather than what is it that you're doing? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, looks like it. Thanks, Simon. Next question. Any questions from Chris Lees? Not this morning? Looks like we're all exhausted. Everyone's done, or everyone done, or any last questions? It looks like it's going to be a good session. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for our three panelists, and let's give them a final hand, and thank you for that. And thank you for showing up. See some of you this afternoon at 3 o'clock for our next session, or in one of our other sessions. And next week, we'll have a session on productivity, how to keep employees productive in these virtual spaces. So thank you so much again, panelists. Thank you, everyone, for being here this morning. And let's go knock it out of the park. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye. Thank you.
Have a good one.
Have a good one. Thanks. Bye.